going to give Gloria Jones, our 22-year-old undergraduate at Memorial University, a few seconds here, Gloria, with the impossible task of a couple of ideas that really struck deeply in your heart, and then on to the Parliamentary Secretary to convene our sharing circle.
Well, what really struck me was just then Jude's point about burnout. And I think the thing is that a lot of your guys' points was to listen to each other's stories and everyone's experiences. And as a person of color, I've voiced that philosophy to the white peers around me and just all tried to practice what I preach as well. So I think also the great thing that's happening here today is all of us as a collective are listening to each other's stories, especially you folks who've mentioned your grandparents and everything, because listening to those collective stories and experiences is what's going to push us forward.
Thank you, Gloria. And now to guide sharing circle number 2, MP Gudie Hutchings, MP for Long Range Mountains in Newfoundland and Labrador, and Parliamentary Secretary to the Minister of Canada's Women and Gender Equality and Rural and Economic Development. And she will invite, as did her honor, each of our panelists on the second panel to offer in 45 seconds their top policy priority. And at the end of that sharing circle, we go to the finale where Her Honor and the Parliamentary Secretary will, with Courtney, and Courtney Clark is what a celebrated leader of this forum to have found such a wonderful wealth of people. We've all been talking for now about a month together preparing for these 90 minutes. So thank you to you, Courtney. Thank you to the interpreters and to our IT champion, Ruth Chen. Over to Parliamentary Secretary Gudie Hutchings and Sharing Circle 2.
Thank you so much, Betsy. And first of all, thanks to Equal Voice and the Feminist Forum for the invitation to be here today. I have to give a big shout out to Her Honor, Judy Foote. Dear colleague and Fred, good to see you. And thank you for breaking so many glass ceilings, Your Honor. And I too have to recognize this profound sadness that we've all been experiencing this week. I can tell you we had caucus today, and there were many tears shed of what's going on in Kamloops, and our hearts go out to all the Indigenous communities across Canada, especially here at home in Newfoundland and Labrador. And you know, we do know COVID-19 hit hard with everyone, but no one more than women, gender diverse peoples, and especially those with children working from home. It's been just a terrible time. But I have to tell you that there was no playbook written on COVID-19. When we all left, everybody thought it was a few weeks and we'd be back, and here we are months later. But thankfully, we do have leaders in our community. We have leaders in Newfoundland and Labrador, and we have leaders across the pond, as we've seen today, Supriya. So in the next 45 seconds each, we're going to let you, as Her Honor did, you know, just prioritize your ideas for us. Supriya, your theme of female leaders is so important. I loved it when you said women lean in, because you know we can't lean in anymore. We have got to lead and let the men follow us. So over to you, Supriya, for your 45 seconds.
Thank you, Gudie. Well, you know, the one unifying theme that came out of this panel is that we need change. And as a researcher, I have to say that scholarship is absolutely key. There is a real need for evidence-based engagement for effective policy change. What I believe we need is a platform that brings together innovative research, big data, and policymakers that can address some of the fundamental questions in the area of leadership. For instance, do all leaders have similar objective functions? Are differences among leaders a good thing? Is there a unifying way of governing for prosperity and equality? What value does diversity in leadership bring to institutions and nations? For the very first time, we have the data on diverse leadership at many levels of governance. And for the very first time, we have the research techniques that make it possible to answer fundamental questions. We, however, need a platform that brings talent and resources together.
Oh, so well said. So well said. Deidre, and nice to see you again, my friend. And you know what? Thank you for breaking the municipal glass ceiling. That needs to change. We all know that women's leadership is different. So Deidre, in your 45 seconds.
I'll do my best. Thank you, Gudie. It's good to see you as well. I want to focus my recommendations on 2 items, just to follow up from the presentation on the non-neutral spaces of policy and legislation. So remuneration and the issue of income tax deductions. In 2019, a long-standing federal tax exemption for elected municipal office holders expired, reducing their after-tax compensation. And in particular, smaller municipalities were impacted by this, and many of those would struggle to boost salaries, even when current compensation rates can be a barrier to more inclusive participation. And I just want to note that our membership just voted on a resolution submitted by the town of Cupids regarding this legislative change, requesting its repeal. We have to address remuneration and income tax. Secondly, we do need to address the issue of running without financial penalty, and I will point to a piece that a resolution that was also supported by our members in the recent AGM, that basically where unpaid leaves of absence and resignations, they place undue financial burdens on candidates and deter underrepresented candidates from running in elections. And just to quote, therefore be it resolved that municipalities, Newfoundland and Labrador, work with the federal and provincial government and other organizational partners to identify the nature and the impact of these stipulations on candidates, potential candidates, and find solutions to these regulatory impediments. We need to carry on with this important work. Thank you.
Well said, Deirdre. You can take a breath now. It was interesting at caucus this morning. We had a comment made by one of our colleagues who said, thankfully, you don't have to pay to become a member to join to support. He said, if I had to do that, there's no way I would have done it. So we need more of the federal regulations into municipal and provincial regulations. Vianne, over to you, Dr. Timmons. Nice to see you, my friend. I must say, your comments about your grandmother and the women that came before us, Saoirse has an incredible role model, and I know she's going to break some glass ceilings too.
If I ever see her, right? If I ever see her with the pandemic. I just want to say first to Jude, my great-great-grandmother was Marie-Therese Benoit, grew up in Conn River. So probably a connection there, Jude. It was so great to see you. The first thing I would say public policy would be childcare, and we're moving on that, so I'm thrilled. The second is support for Indigenous communities. It's the greatest public policy failure in the history of this country, and we need to do something about it. And the third thing I'll say is that in the 1990s, I thought we broke the glass ceiling. I was the first woman dean of education at UPEI. There was a woman minister of education and a woman premier and a woman president of the university. I thought we're there, and we kind of went quiet, and look where we are more than 20 years later. We need our voice. Keep your voices out there. Stay strong. Keep the message going. I know it's fatiguing, but for Saoirse, we need you, and our grandkids need you. So please stay strong.
Thanks, Vianne. So well said. So, Boya, you hit the nail on the head so much. Racism just cannot be tolerated. And oh, Kathy, sorry, I jumped one ahead. Whoops, Kathy, sorry. Whoops, we'll get to you, Sabaya. Kathy, 35 years. Wow, what an accomplishment. And you know what? Accessibility, I love your line, leave no one behind. We shouldn't even be having those conversations in 2021. But thanks to the great work that you're doing, we are breaking that glass ceiling too. So over to you, Kathy.
Thanks so much, Gudie. I have 3 asks, and yes, accessibility is of the utmost. I ask that moving policy forward that we have an intersectional disability gender analysis lens that's applied to ensure that it reaches and reflects our diverse population. My second ask is that policies develop and change. We need to ensure that it is an inclusive design is implemented so that no one is left behind. And then of course, my third ask is that it is crucial, absolutely crucial, that women with disabilities are at all decision-making tables and that we look forward to collaborating on all those decisions. Thanks, Gudie.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Cassie. Now over to you, Sabaya. Yes, now I'll say it again. You know, it is 2021. And again, racism shouldn't be tolerated in aid. It drives me that here we are still having those conversations. And I loved your word about trust, because if we don't have trust, you know, that's the key element of all of this. And look at the trust that we're showing today with all of these powerful people here. We need to keep conversations like this going too. Sabaya, over to you, my friend.
Thanks. It's Sobia. So I have 5 things that I was able to pare down from my list of 35. Put into practice all 94 calls to action of the Truth and Reconciliation process and follow fully the UNDRIP. Give land back to the people who are Indigenous to this land. Second, dismantle institutions which are built on anti-Black, anti-Indigenous, anti-migrant racisms and cannot be trusted to protect and serve Black, Indigenous, and racialized communities. Third, stop using outdated consultation models. Go to the communities and groups you are trying to support. Expect lack of trust. Keep at it. Fourth, give racialized, migrant, and Indigenous communities a space and time to figure out what they need to end violence. Give them resources, money, training, time, mentorship, whatever. Believe them, believe what they need, what they say they need to come up with good solutions. And last, hire racialized, migrant, Indigenous people with actual analysis you don't want to hear. Listen to them. Hire those with anti-racist, anti-colonial analysis. And that's it.
Well said. One thing I have to tell you, in my role as parliamentary secretary, I work hand in hand with Minister Monseft as we build the National Action Plan. And we have done, we've connected with thousands of people from coast to coast to coast on each aspect, because I agree with you so much, my friend. It's programs like this, when we're making change to end gender-based violence and racism, it has to be built from the ground up. So I'm so delighted that we have been doing that. And like I said, we've had roundtables and, as Her Honor would say, healing circles from all across the country. And that's how you build a good plan from the ground up. Now, Jude, my friend, your grandmother sounds amazing as well. And mine was too. And thank you for just reminding us we all come from a very special place. I'm so sad that some of the programs that we put in place didn't help. But I'm delighted that you and yours reached out and took advantage of a terrible situation and reached out to help others in need. So give us your 45 seconds.
Yeah, so as my photo was put up earlier, that is the statue of Court Riel. He was a slaver that stole my people and Beothuk people and killed them, sold them into slavery. There's no reason for his statue to still be up outside of the Confederation building. There's no reason for a lot of these statues and names. The doctrine of discovery, I was just talking to some of the people that are with me in the Indigenous Activist Collective, and we believe that there needs to be a huge renaming and ripping down of these colonial figures. That is like bare minimum, and I'm asking for it today because I actually believe that by me asking today that we could make it happen. I know that there's history connected to it, but it's not a history that should be celebrated. It's a history that we should be ashamed of. So we would like the start of that ball to be rolling. We've been asking for years. And then on top of that, also defunding and dismantling the police and raising the minimum wage and or implementing a universal basic income, because those of us that are most marginalized are quite literally dying in poverty. I think that's it. Oh, when we're removing the statue, can we give that power back to the people instead of using it to, I don't know where I'm going with this, but it needs to be given the power back to the people. They worked towards getting it taken down, so they should be in charge of how it's taken down, and not just elected members that are Indigenous or members of your choosing, but members of our choosing who are important and spiritual and sacred to us.